we are smarter collaborating together than working alone. And that is as much true for institutions as it is for individuals. We are smarter working across the boundaries of institutions with groups and individuals outside the walls of a single organization. And Paul and Tom and Jeff have told us how that makes businesses more successful. It's truly true in the corporate domain. Sberbank, after all, made, what did we hear, 30 billion rubles as a result of its recent crowdsourcing experiments. But how do we, practically speaking, use this technology and these processes? How do we marry the chaotic success of Wikipedia to the hierarchical institutions of governance and government at the national and at the local level? We have three challenges that we face when we want to do so. The problems that government faces are very serious and very complex. We live today in a world with 7 billion people, and soon we'll live in a world with 10 billion people, 40% of whom will not have access to health care, to clean water, to education. Are these kind of contests too frivolous? You know, this is not the Eurovision Song Contest we're talking about. Are these too frivolous for the serious problems that government faces? Globally, trust in government institutions is declining. We only need to witness the Arab Spring, the Occupy Wall Street movement. In the United States, by some measures, trust is at an all-time low in government of 9%. So government has to act with legitimacy, it has to engender trust, it has to have stability in its decision-making. It's trying to connect this pulsing, vibrant network to the institution too experimental, too radical for government. And finally, are these techniques too novel? It might be a nice to have, but is it a must-have that's worth the investment of time and money to work in these new ways? And I would argue that collaboration is more important for government than for business, because it enables, in these very tough economic times, it enables government to deliver better services for less money and more democratically. A two-for-one, if you will. Crowdsourcing is a serious solution to serious problems. 20 nations have already created and launched national data portals, countless states and local governments as well, and they're putting out spending data. And with that information about how government spends money, they can crowdsource the development of solutions to spot fraud and waste. Sophisticated models, visualizations, predictions are great. But what they can also do, as in the case of the state of Rajasthan in India, is to crowdsource the reading of that data in the town square and the writing of that data on 100,000 walls of villages, where people can then identify paychecks that have been written to someone who died, or bridges that were never built but claim that they were. There are local platforms like SeeClickFix, in use now in 70 governments across 6 continents, that allow for the distribution of crowdsourced problem spotting, identifying red lights that are out at intersections or potholes in the street. This allows government to target the delivery of services more effectively and more cheaply. But it also allows for the innovating of solutions, not just the spotting of problems. Dr. Greff told us about this example already. The Pentagon, the U.S. Defense Department, using crowdsourcing to design a new combat vehicle. And they got, not in years, not in months, but in weeks, 159 competitive, serious submissions. How did this work? Well, it works because the Obama administration, through our Open Government Initiative, created a single platform called challenge.gov that makes it simple and easy for every ministry that wants to post a challenge, to ask people not simply to suggest ideas, but to develop solutions. Our office helped ministries to frame the question, to name the judges, to identify the goals. And initially we provided some of the support centrally to help educate the lawyers in the ministries to say, you too can do this, it's okay to do this. But very quickly we put ourselves out of business because the ministries began to talk to each other, and now there's an effective community of practice with at least 60 agencies who communicate about the challenges that they've created, the successes that they've had, and they learn from their experience putting these challenges on the web through this single free platform. Secondly, designed right, these are not experimental projects. As you mentioned, I had some experience creating a platform called Peer-to-Patent, in which we connected volunteer scientists and technologists to the national patent offices, initially in the US, and then in the UK, in Japan, and in Australia, What this is a structured, targeted process that uses rating and ranking, thumbs up and thumbs down, if you will, to deliver to the government official not 10,000 suggestions, not 100 suggestions, but 10 pieces of information, 10 items that will help to inform his or her ultimate decision about the application that deserves a patent. And I describe this at length in my book, Whiskey Government. The British Prime Minister this week announced a new initiative to crowdsource the identification of regulations that are impeding and hindering entrepreneurship and the starting of new businesses. But he's not just asking for those 1,000 ideas. He's offering a process to ask the crowd to then help implement those suggestions, to gather the data that's necessary, so that crowdsourcing doesn't create more work for government officials. It helps them in making their decisions. Finally, it's a must-have, not just a nice-to-have. The tools to crowdsource are free or nearly free. The solutions that are generated are fast. It makes government cheaper, smarter, and more effective. In the Veterans Ministry in the United States, the agency asked 19,000 employees for a solution to the problem of how do we bring down the wait time, the time that veterans coming back from Afghanistan and from Iraq are waiting to get the services that are owed to them, from more than a year to now only a few weeks. It took only one person in the ministry, part-time, to run a project that generated involvement from 7,000 employees in the first month alone. There's a town in California that just launched an iPhone app that manages a network of trained volunteers who respond when someone has a heart attack before the ambulance can arrive, saving lives at no extra cost. The Latvian Parliament is working with Latvia's banks to authenticate citizens' identities and crowdsource the development of new legislation shaped by citizens and advised by a network of voluntary experts, and then implement those laws. And we've heard that here from the Prime Minister that members of the public in Russia are helping to rewrite new laws like this law on fisheries, or working together to provide aid and assistance during the devastating fires that rampaged Moscow last year, supplementing official government efforts at a time when the nation needed all hands on deck. So let me close by saying we have the means to engage more people in the life of their democracy. This is not about the technology, that's free. It's about asking questions, a willingness to ask and to create engaging and accessible opportunities for people to participate. And it's not like voting. It's not about creating a single mass process that's one size fits all. What's important is crowdsourcing wisely, not crowdsourcing widely. Developing many, many different small ways for people to lend their expertise, their experience, and their enthusiasm for the public good. Whether it's about patents or fish, veterans or potholes. Churchill said, democracy is the worst form of government except all others. But we can do better. And thanks to the techniques that we've heard about today, we have the experience to make more effective and more participatory the institutions of our democracy, not just in principle, but in practice. Thomas Jefferson said, we can make every citizen an acting member of the government and the offices nearest and most interesting to him. This, if we do this, Jefferson went on to say, attaches him by the... Thank you, and happy birthday.